Welcome back to Riding Bikes in San Diego, and we are on Fairmount, and typically we dip off to the right back there, and that is the on-ramp to Montezuma. And we didn't do that today. Instead, we decided that, well, we're on an e-bike. It's been a long week, and I hadn't felt like riding my regular bike. It's also a Friday, and typically I don't commute in on Fridays, so I have to go in for something at my job, and it's gonna take like 6 hours. So figured might as well just fire up the e-bike. And this means I could take a route that I don't normally take because it's a really hilly route, and I'll show you that over the next couple of days. But right now, all these drivers that we're passing are on Fairmount north of Montezuma, and we're hardly ever over here. But there's a pretty nice buffer to this paint here. Even though paint isn't protection, a visual buffer is good. It's plenty of space for them to install a physical barrier one day if they'd like to. But there's a bunch of traffic over here because some people are going into Grantville, which we're going to do, and other folks are going to get on the 15. And there is this excellent turnoff here. The pavement's garbage, but the bones of this design are here, and it is fantastic to be able to get off of the expressway area, away from all those cars, and just be on my own dedicated path for a little while. Honestly, this is a freaking model for how we should be able to cross busy roads in San Diego. I don't know why there isn't more of this. All those folks are getting onto the 8 east and west, or possibly the 15. This is a pretty important junction for people driving cars. I understand that, so we get to avoid it all. We just rise above it onto some pavement that's designed for us, and then it drops us down, so we're going under the 8 here, and that is gonna have us stop at this crossing here, which is a service road we've been on before. I think only one time I've made a right at this light here, and it's pretty treacherous and gnarly, and it's a hill I don't want to climb up wearing to get to where I'm going. But I can hang out here. We'll wait at this light for a second. I'm going to point out that we're going to wait at this light because we're not going to wait at other lights in this video. Fair warning to all the people who like to freak out about that, but it's not going to be safe, as you'll see in just a moment. I get a buffer for just a few feet, and then that brings us to this next traffic light, which separates Fairmount and Mission Gorge. So typically when I ride, I'm staying to the left somehow, and going over to that Home Depot that's over there and all that garbage. But I'm jumping the light here because I want all those drivers to be stopped for a little while I build some distance between me and them. Because there's no bike lane, there's no infrastructure, there's no paint, there's no design. There is some red curb though, and this is a pretty wide lane. And if anybody wants to pull out a tape measure and let me know if there's room for a bike lane here, spoiler, I think that there is. This actually reminds me quite a bit of when we were biking a couple weeks ago on University, up to 54th Street and beyond. Like, there's room, there's just no design. And this road looks like it's about fresh for a repave anyway. Maybe they can put something in here. Again, I'm at the red light here, but wait for a few drivers to go through, and then I get the green. And if you look in the rear view, which you can, all those drivers that I left at that red light are still back there, which is good. It makes the road safer for me, although they are starting to get a little bit closer, and I'm wary of that. And for those who think that I'm riding without looking behind myself, on this particular bike I have a mirror on the left side handlebar, and I also have my mirror that's on my sunglasses, which looks a little dorky, but I'll take a little bit of a dorky look to keep myself safe. I'm seeing that this light is turning yellow here, turning red. There's an arrow, and you can't see it, but I got the head nod from that bus driver, so they knew I was going before they got their green light. And that turning bus is creating a nice buffer for me once again to not have other drivers breathing down my neck, especially since parking starts up over here, right next to all those parking lots. Isn't it weird how that always happens? There's street parking, and then a bunch of parking lots. There's construction over here. I'm kind of curious to see what's going to go in. If they build something like housing, eventually this area is going to need infrastructure for people to safely walk and bike around. I just don't see any way around that. That taco shop ain't bad. But a bike lane does pick up. And this is what I want everybody to really pay attention to. It's not like I just happen to be on a road that has no infrastructure. There's a bike lane that's actually here. It's also the most direct route to where I'm going. So I'm taking it. All I'm trying to do is get to the infrastructure that exists. And there's no alternative down here. There's no other way to get to this painted bike lane some other way from where I started. It just is impossible. One of the things that always cracks me up when I visit other cities, like New York or something like that, people are like, "Oh, drive with the GPS," and I'm like, "Well, I know how to get there." But then the GPS is spitting up things like, "Do you want to save a half hour?" Because there are different ways to get places. In San Diego, we have a typography that often there are only a couple of options, and if you're on a bike, I would suggest that there are even less options. Here we meet up with Friars, and this becomes Mission Gorge from here. And while we're waiting for this light and for clearance to make the right, one of the things I want to point out is I find it astounding. There's no bus route that goes on Mission Gorge from here to Mission Trails Park and beyond to Santee. I find that really strange. People live on one side of that. There are businesses, there are places people work, warehouses. You would think that there would be some kind of connection. There is a bus or a trolley rather, that goes from the transit station way behind us when we first crossed under the 8. There happens to be a really good trolley station there, and that will take one over to the on the Green Line to Santee. But you'd think that there would be a bus line over here too, but instead we get a bike lane. We're in this bike lane, and this bike lane is going to persist until at least Jackson. I think it actually goes all the way into Santee, but I'm going to ride this into Jackson because I'm on the e-bike, so I can take the hills. And we'll cut it off from here, except I'm not thrilled that this is all in the door zone. I mean, this is a 3-lane road, and in either direction, any time of day, usually I ride from the other direction, but I've never seen it really clogged up. It's just a giant expressway. As a matter of fact, I think that it was built before something like the 125 and the 8 connecting to the 125, which now I think is a much more popular route to connect these things in between. There's more than enough room on this road to put in real infrastructure. And the worst part is this is not even going to be consistent, but we'll do that in another day. How about we pick it up tomorrow right around this intersection, and from here we are just going to drive less and ride a bike.